Apple obviously has made a ton of news over the last week with their Apple Intelligence and everything that they're adding with AI into the iPhone. There's a lot to unpack here, and Connor and I want to give you some interesting perspectives you may not have heard yet. Now, one of the big things that I think a lot of people are obviously talking about is the fact that Apple felt like they were at a bit of a rocky place. They got usurped in the stock market as the second biggest company. And NVIDIA overtook them for a brief moment, but don't worry, after Apple Intelligence launched, they have now reclaimed the spot of number 2 and are now the second biggest company, I believe right behind Microsoft. So right up there, don't worry, Apple is not dead thanks to Apple Intelligence. Connor, what are you seeing on this?
Yeah, so we were all waiting for this, right? This was the moment where it's sort of like Google's thing last year where it's like, well, just wait for Google Gemini, just wait for Google Gemini. This was the moment where everybody was like, Apple hasn't done anything yet. What's Apple going to do? And so they came out, and I think they really nailed it. I know, I was breaking it into my head, Jaden, between I was thinking like optimizers and innovators, meaning like if you are somebody that just wants to use your iPhone better and wants AI integrated into stuff, and you don't care about augmenting how you do your workday and all the kind of stuff that we like train on and all that kind of stuff, then this is phenomenal. It's just made everything on your iPhone better. I will say sort of out of the gate, the thing I was thinking was nothing earth-shattering, but again, it took, 1.5 billion people's device that they're picking up, if you believe statistics, over 100 times a day, and started integrating it. And so they were very careful not to say artificial intelligence or AI. They kept saying Apple Intelligence. And to me, the big takeaway here is like Apple is like, look, let's do this kind of, smaller steps. We're not going to sort of like come out with some new giant large language model that's going to shake the earth. But we've heard you. Everybody wants Siri to be useful. And we have seen for a year and a half that ChatGPT and other models can make essentially Siri in these other platforms extremely useful. So why isn't it useful on the very thing that you want it to be useful on? So the big thing I would start with is Siri and how Siri has changed. Siri now sounds more like a natural language kind of thing. You can kind of talk to your phone. Siri will be, remembering things that you've already asked it. The big thing is that Siri will integrate across apps and things like that. So you can say, hey, I know I was supposed to take my mom out for lunch, but where it'll look at your email, and then it will look at your calendar. And then now here's the interesting thing too, right, is that Apple's all about privacy. And I think they actually really nailed that too, as far as I know about sort of like the inner workings of this, which is this is a device that's obviously much smaller. I don't want to compare it to a 3.5 or something like that, but it's smaller. It lives on your device. The one thing is, well, what if you want a bigger question? Well, that's where they came up with this sort of like Frankenstein hack, which I don't know if I love, but okay, here we are. It's like, do you want me to go ask ChatGPT? And Jaden, I don't know kind of like how you see that. When you see sort of Siri, which is the big thing, when you see how ChatGPT is integrated, what is this to you? Is this sort of like the next sort of thing that AI is doing? Or is this like just, hey, my iPhone now works better?
Yeah, well, okay, so first of all, I do think this is massive. You and I have both been harping on Siri for about a year now, telling Apple to get their crap together with that. So I'm actually really excited. I think this is amazing. A couple interesting, just juicy tidbits on this story, though. Obviously, okay, Siri's going to be better. I mean, overall, hats off to Apple. Siri is now going to be, like you mentioned, it's like, hey, play that podcast Connor sent me last week, or Connor sent me. And it like knows who Connor is. It goes through my messages. It finds the podcast you sent me, and it's going to start playing it. Like, that is so useful. Your phone it feels like an agent. Now, I don't think it's going to be able to do stuff in the background, really. It's kind of like you tell it to do something, and it makes it easier for you. But regardless, and it also has a little text chat thing where you can type it in. So like if you're in a meeting and you're trying to be like low key, you could still be silent doing it. So that alone, I think, is just going to make like, okay, beautiful. This is the AI play that Apple always needed to do. They're done. Great. Okay, a couple interesting, juicy caveats to this, though. Number one is, of course, the ChatGPT integration, where it's going to be, running, getting AI results from ChatGPT. And, of course, there's all the controversy of like, how can a $3 trillion tech company not build their own AI model? Okay, whatever. Moving on. It's ChatGPT. The second thing that I think is interesting about that, though, is that the terms of the deal came out, and OpenAI is not paying anything to Apple, and Apple is not paying anything to OpenAI. They are running this for free for exposure. OpenAI really just wants to say, instead of 100 million users a week, we have 500 million users a week. Like Apple or OpenAI literally is just eating the cost of GPT-4o, the most expensive. And like, you got to imagine there's a ton of people that have like GPT-4o and are like paying for it. And all of a sudden it's going to come free on your iPhone. And it's like, well, I use the app on my phone and now it's free. I'm just going to cancel my subscription. So I don't know if we see, I don't know. They're going for distribution. They just want more people to try it, more people to fall in love with it. And I think this is like it feels like a risky play where it's like, oh my gosh, they're going to spend tons of money, like an insane amount of money to host and to do AI for the entire Apple ecosystem for free. Like that's crazy, but they're not in a bad place. They just announced last month that their revenue for this year, I think, is going to be over $3 billion. So like they probably can handle it, but at the same time, it's pretty crazy. So yeah, I don't know. I'd love your take on that. And I have more juicy stuff.
That's really, and I hadn't heard that yet. Thanks. Like so that's interesting because again, I know we talk about it a lot, but this is AI applied. It's all about adoption and who's using it and how are you using it, right? So it does us no good for like the geeks who are power users. That doesn't sort of like help spread the word. Like you need people, and I still run into people every day who don't really use ChatGPT or only use it to write an email every once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
If this is something where it can drive adoption for OpenAI, I think that is actually really worth the money. And if you think about sort of like people finally using Siri, because now everybody will know that Siri will be useful. I guess it's not useful yet, but it will be useful. And you hit that, and then if it says, hey, do you want me to ask ChatGPT? And then you get a really spectacular answer back. I'm just trying to think, two things. First of all, will people sort of say like, don't worry about it, don't ask ChatGPT? Like it has to be pretty seamless, so that's one thing. Second thing is I have full confidence that the answers coming back from ChatGPT will be fantastic. Will people associate that with ChatGPT rather than Siri? Because they're not exclusive with OpenAI. That's the other
right. Is that you'll be able to swap out models in the future?
100%. So they could sort of, they're still talking to Google. They were talking to Anthropic, everything like that, right? Now, I don't know if those Anthropic probably can't. Google could have easily afforded to, do this as well. But like really like OpenAI is going for that play. But that's the weird thing to me is that why wouldn't Apple just build their own thing? Maybe they're just like buying some more.
You know what's interesting?
Yeah.
Maybe, but also it feels like there's precedent for this. It feels like they're just treating an AI model like a search engine. And everyone's like, why doesn't Apple just make their own search engine to compete with Google and throw it on default as Safari? Like that would be $1 billion or, that'd be like $100 billion a year probably. Yeah. But they haven't, and they haven't gone there. And so I think it's really interesting that they're also not really doing the AI model play. They're just treating it like it's a search engine. It's like, yeah, pick your default AI model, pick your default search engine. Like, we don't care. We'll just make the device and we'll orchestrate that. So I do think that's a really interesting point. Now, I know you mentioned that they nailed the privacy side of this. And I was on board with that too. And I was like, totally, they nailed the privacy. They got their Apple silicone, whatever, and their custom server stuff. Like, sounds legit. I looked at the press release. I had my CTO for AI Box read over the press release and everything and give me a breakdown. And he was like, yeah, they're rock solid, Loctite, good. Okay. Then Tim Cook did an interview with Marcus Brownlee, and all of a sudden, everyone on Twitter was like, what the heck? And it seems a little bit more dubious than this. And the interesting thing is Elon Musk was like, if, Apple is integrating, OpenAI into their operating system, like I'm not going to let anyone at Tesla have iPhones, and you're going to have to check them at the door if you come in. And I was like, oh, he's just overreacting and being ridiculous because he's mad that it wasn't Grok. After this interview with Tim Cook, I'm like, oh, maybe there was something here. So essentially, Marcus Brownlee asked Tim Cook, like, hey, what's the deal? You guys are big on security. Yeah, Apple Silicon, cool. I got to say it, that word. He's like, so like, how does it work when ChatGPT? And Tim Cook's like, well, technically, they're two different things. We have Apple Silicon, so if you ask a question, it's going and it's running in a super secure place. But if you do need information that's not in the AI model, that's essentially like what you get browsed with Bing on OpenAI. He's like, that we just send out to OpenAI's servers. So this is the thing that a lot of people are freaking out about, is it's like high security, but that's only if you're asking a question that's known by the AI model. As soon as you ask, which, I mean, that's a lot, but it's not everything. I mean, I would say...
Wait, so what I was understanding from that though also was that OpenAI has agreed not to train on anything, right? So anything
maybe, but it doesn't mean it's secure, because now it's out of the Apple ecosystem. And let's say regulators, Apple, there's been like all these cases where like regulators are like, hey, Apple, you have to unlock these iPhones so we can like, look at these people's stuff, and they're like, sorry, we can't do it, or whatever. Like Apple kind of does that, like hardcore on security. Okay, but maybe OpenAI will do that, and maybe they won't, but it's out of their control. So it's like they're shipping off 1 billion users' data to OpenAI, and now you have to trust another party. And let's say OpenAI has like a third party that does something else. It's out of Apple's hands, so Apple can't give it like a certifiable security approval, because it's out of their hands. And so I'm not saying like OpenAI is going to do anything nefarious, but like maybe they will. Who knows? It's not up to Apple anymore.
Okay. Super basic question, and maybe I just missed this, but like what kinds of questions? Because I just kept hearing like if it's outside the scope, but is like right now if you said, hey Siri, what's the weather in blah blah blah, like, and it goes in
outside of the scope.
Yeah. Right. I mean, is that because right now Siri can tell you the weather in Nebraska or something?
Maybe if they have their own integration on like the weather app. So I'd say weather app.
But there's more than that, right? If you say, hey Siri, whatever, and then usually like I remember if this is Alexa or Siri, but it'll like, well, here's what I found from the internet. Here's what I found from Wikipedia. Does Siri do that now? I should have tested this. I don't know.
If you say, hey Siri, where do I go to vote in the Republican or the Democratic primary election? Where's the polling booth? Out of our scope, send it to OpenAI. OpenAI leaks that. I don't know. Now all of a sudden, whoever in the government knows your political affiliation, whether you wanted them to or not.
Siri can't. So you're saying Siri can't do that now, old Siri, and new Siri won't be able to do that either because it's not connected to the internet.
I mean, I think old Siri, I don't know. I never use old Siri, so I actually don't really know its capabilities.
I don't either, but I use Alexa a lot, and Alexa.
Old Siri's dead. Old Siri's dead. So it's a whole new.
But
Siri can't come to the phone right now, Connor.
But like but even with Alexa, however bad Alexa is, you ask it like, hey, sort of, what's the population or whatever. It'll say like, here's what I found on Wikipedia. So it's going to the internet.
But it's moved the tech stack. Yeah.
Okay.
So those questions are now going to get fielded by ChatGPT instead.
Holy cow. Well, that's a lot then. And that's a huge friction point, because my thought is like, when it says like, do you want to ask ChatGPT? It's just one more layer of friction. The whole thing about adoption is that it has to be as frictionless as possible.
But I think, I could be wrong, but I'm assuming, and I'll have to try it, but I'm assuming when it asks you, do you want to ask with ChatGPT, you say yes the first time, and then it will default to that. That's my assumption. I don't think that's going to ask you every single time, do you want to go with ChatGPT on this?
No, I think so. I mean, no, if I ask like one day to the next, I think it's going to sort of say like, do you want to check with ChatGPT?
Well, that's a huge friction. Yeah, that's
a huge friction. It's a huge friction. Yeah, no, I agree. Like that's the adoption piece that you and I talk about a lot, right? I think that's a huge friction.
That will make a big difference how they roll that out. I mean, as a user, I would want to just pick my model and be able to just default.
So, Jayden, you and I talk about this a lot. Perplexity, right? Like I think you're a paid user where we use it, right? So, and you remember that you've talked about this before. How you ask Perplexity a question. If you don't know Perplexity, you probably should, but it's the Google search essentially replacement with ChatGPT, natural language kind of built under it. So it gives you a whole bunch of sources and then it answers you in natural language. Perplexity.com or Perplexity.ai. I guess it's fantastic. But here's the thing, Jayden, you and I agree on about Perplexity, is that especially if you have the pro model, I don't know if it's in the free version, you say, hey, I want to know more about like the Apple conference or whatever. It will often ask you a follow-up question. Hey, do you want to know more about the AI? Do you want to know more about the chips? Do you want to blah, blah? And I always just skip that. I think you do too, right? We're just like, just answer however you want to answer. Do you know what I mean? Like you don't want to type in additional information. And that's the friction point that I'm going to be curious how Siri handles,
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating. I mean, there's a lot coming, and it's not to say Apple can't fix some of this stuff or whatever, but like I would just say you always got to read the fine print, and sometimes the fine print's not good. You got to watch the interview of the CEO. So it'll be interesting to see. Regardless, it seems like Apple is crushing it right now. Their market cap is $3.2 trillion, right behind 3.25, right behind Microsoft at 3.28. So Apple is probably getting close to eclipsing Microsoft and fighting for that. We're talking about the the double-digit $1 billion is a difference. It's not even, $100 billion. It's just, 20,
That-
30.
That's wild, man. That's wild, Tim.
So yeah, they're neck and neck. It'll be interesting to see. Nvidia's right behind them at 3.22. Alphabet is, just take a stab if you haven't looked. I would just be curious your perspective. Alphabet's number 4. Guess how many trillions of dollars their market cap is. So
Are they over?
have Microsoft at 3.2, Apple at 3.2, Nvidia at 3.2,
Oh my gosh, I hope that they're above 3, but what are they, like 2.8 or something?
2.1.
No.
Meta is a solid more than $1 trillion behind Apple, Microsoft, and Nvidia.
Oh, that's Meta. I was thinking Google. Oh, wait, are you thinking
Sorry, Google. Google is Alphabet. Yeah.
That is wild. Wow. All right.
And yeah, it's crazy. I feel like I need to go through this list of market cap like on a semi-frequent basis because I'm always surprised. Like Amazon's at 1.9 trillion, Saudi Aramco is at 1.7, Meta is at 1.2, TSMC 890 billion. So yeah, then we drop billion.
It used to mean $1 trillion used to mean something.
Yeah,
listen, if we have, I know we could talk about Apple all day long, but you all, I'm sure, are probably trying to get out of your cars right now. Thank you for tuning into the AI Applied podcast. If you enjoyed it, we would love if you leave a rating and review. You know how much that means to us. Maybe today's the day. We would love that. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great rest of your day.